Hello, this is Preheat. Welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So this is going to be a follow-up to my Evoker guide I just published, and the reason why I wanted to come out with this rotation guide right away is because there are a lot of changes to the rotation that we've seen since I came out with that video, and obviously this is something I knew would happen because there's a lot that was not exactly optimized in the APL when it came to how we were playing around Power Swell and Iridescence, but now we know that there are certain things that are actually worth doing. But this is not stuff that you necessarily have to adopt if you don't like it, if you aren't a fan of this super min-maxy stuff, and you can decide for yourself if it's worth it. So all of these things are going to be very, very small gains, right? So I just want you to be aware that some of the things I'm going to cover in this video are like a 0.1%, 0.2% gain, right? 0.3%, but obviously adds up. And the reason why I'm making this video is because you're probably looking at your sim, you know, and you're wondering like, why is my dragon opening with Deep Breath? Why is it disintegrating before its Eternity Search in this Dragon Rage? So hopefully this will give you the insight you need. And then obviously you can make your own decision and decide if you want to go and min-max this stuff, or if you just prefer to play it, you know, the vanilla standard way. So anyways, let's start off by talking about when this new rotation is relevant and when it's not relevant, because the rotation in the previous video, for the most part, is actually still accurate in some cases. But obviously it's not just across the board. Okay, so there is a Power Swell rotation is what we'll call it here. And we're going to be using this rotation to play around Power Swell unless we have the new 4-piece bonus, right, from the raid that comes out tomorrow, the 10.1 4-piece, and we have Bloodlust and Power Infusion. So if you don't have PI, if you aren't going to be getting PI, you don't even need to worry about the standard rotation from the previous video. You would only worry about that rotation if you're getting PI, and the reason why is because with the new 4-piece bonus, it is actually better for us to do everything we can to try and extend Dragon Rage as much as possible, right? Because it gives us so much more value. Obviously, with the current tier set, though, we have the reverse incentive. Our current tier bonus has an incentive for us in Dragon Rage to space out our empowers. That way we get a damage buff from our critical strike. So this is something that we didn't really play around at all in patch 10.0.7 and before. But it is something that we're playing around now. It's mostly about the fact that we're stacking this 5% crit buff with the Power Swell talent that we're now taking, because we weren't taking this before, right? And also it has some implications with Iridescence. So this is another talent you probably didn't really play around too much, but just be aware that using Azure Strike in your Dragon Rage, if you have the blue buff up, is really bad. Right, like we want to be getting the most out of this that we can. So if we're using Azure Strike, we're just wasting a stack, right? So basically, if you have either the red or the blue version of Iridescence, it doesn't matter which one of the buffs you get, right? You get the red one from Fire Breath, it's right up here. You get the blue one from Eternity Surge. It doesn't matter which color we have. If we have any of these, we will be pressing Living Flame as our builder, even if you have to hardcast it, okay? Because we do not want to waste our blue buff. So that's part of it. And Power Swell is obviously part of it too, and then our current tier bonus. But even if you have the new tier bonus, it's still worthwhile as long as you aren't getting PI, as long as you aren't going to basically give up some extensions to play this way. Another thing is that we kind of want to play around this Ancient Flame talent. So this is actually really, really great to have in Dragon Rage. The issue is we would have to find something else to precast with, right? Because we want to engage the boss, but we don't want to use Living Flame. So for the time being, we can use our staff, right? Staff is a pretty good option, but that's not going to last us forever. So the question is, okay, well, if we're not using our staff, then what are we going to precast with? If Living Flame's off the table, can't use the staff. Well, it turns out that Deep Breath is actually... Okay, I can't believe I'm saying this. Deep Breath seems to be a pretty good spell to open with a single target. And I know what you're thinking, this sounds crazy, and I agree. I don't really like the idea of basically flying into the target, deep breathing on the pole, because I know that's going to get me killed, right? But technically it is a gain, and you will see in the sims that it actually does this. Memes aside, I really don't recommend doing this in practice, right? Unless it's a target where like you know that the tank is going to be taunting it right away, but it is a 0.3% gain, so just be aware of that. And then obviously if you're not doing that, precasting your Living Flame into Verdant Embrace is also going to be a pretty nice way to do this, right? So yeah, this is one option right here where we Verdant Embrace, and then we would go into our cooldowns right from here, and then just proceed like normal, right? So we're early chaining our 2 disintegrates there. We're going to Eternity Surge here. Let this one fully cast since I didn't get any procs. We'll go ahead and use that first Living Flame right there. Early chaining, as long as we have 3, we'll be clipping with Burnout whenever we see it. We don't have anything here, so I'm going to Azure Strike. Yeah, by the way, the Empower bug is back. It's really annoying. I can't believe that we're back here, but we're back here. So I could have cut that part out of the video, and I was going to do a whole explanation on the rotation, but then we had the bug happen, and that kind of made me lose my whole train of thought. But anyways, I feel like now is a good time to explain the actual rotation itself, since we were kind of talking about how you open and you want Ancient Flame. But basically, this is the idea, and this is a new graphic I've made. This is on my Wowhead page, by the way, if you want to check it out there. But anyways, so yeah, precast your Living Flame or your Deep Breath if you're crazy, right? Or you can Living Flame into Verdant Embrace, right? That's fine too. But basically, you're going to Dragon Rage into Fire Breath, and then you're going to wait, right? You're going to wait to use your Eternity Surge until after we have gone through our Shattering Star and also a couple Disintegrates, right? So we're going to be doing 2 Disintegrates usually. If you get PI right now, it's going to probably be 3, and it may even be a Living Flame afterwards if you have a Burnout proc. But basically, we just want to buy time while the Power Swell buff is up, and we want to use as much Essence as we can. So we're going to be early chaining at tick 3. So obviously at this point, you're going to be flooded with Essence. You're going to have full Essence, plus you're going to have Shattering Star giving you an Essence burst. So you're going to have at least 2 Disintegrates no matter what. Sometimes you'll have 3 if you're playing with the 6 Essence talent. But you want to just get through those Disintegrates as much as you can. And once your Power Swell buff falls off, that's when you're going to use Tip the Scales Eternity Surge. You don't have to tip the scales on this, by the way. It's kind of a minimal thing, right? Like, so if you want to tip the scales on it, you can. And if you don't want to, that's fine too, right? It's obviously up to you. And then the rest of it's kind of similar to what you're used to, except for now we Living Flame with a couple more considerations. So number 1 is obviously Burnout, right? You already knew that. You're going to be clipping with Burnout too. So if you get Burnout, you can clip at tick 3. That is totally kosher. But you know, obviously if you don't have Burnout, you're still going to be casting it. You just wouldn't clip whatever. So if we have either flavor of Iridescence, red or blue, we're going to want to use Living Flame. That's simply because we want to either get value out of the red one, or we want to not waste the blue one with Azure Strike, right? And then also if you have any amount of Scarlet Adaptation, which you'll probably have at least 50% if you have it, you would use Living Flame in that case too, right? And all of these are hard cast options. And if you don't have any of those being true, then what you would instead do is use Azure Strike. And you're just going to continue with the Builder Spender kind of thing until you reach your next cooldown on Fire Breath. And then obviously use your Fire Breath right as soon as it comes up, and use your Shattering Star as soon as it comes up, and use your Eternity Surge as soon as it comes up. And it should all kind of line up well if you just space them out on the first one, because the cooldown on Fire Breath and Eternity Surge is now linked, right? Like we get the same amount of cooldown reduction there on both of those. So as long as you delay on the first one, it should naturally come up just perfectly on the subsequent ones. And you'll notice that sometimes like you'll end up in a situation where your Shattering Star will be basically lining up perfectly with your Eternity Surge, and sometimes it won't. But you're not going to want to hold it for Eternity Surge, okay? Just send your Shattering Star as soon as you get it. The only case where you would like hold it is if they're both available at the same time, and then in that case you would Shattering Star into your Eternity Surge. And the main reason you're doing that isn't for the window of damage on Eternity Surge. It's more so just for the fact that you get your blue buff and you don't waste it on Shattering Star, because Shattering Star does a lot less damage than the Disintegrate will with the Iridescence blue buff. And just continue with your rotation as always, right? And you're using your Living Flame if you have Burnout, you're using if you've got Iridescence, you're using if you have Scarlet Adaptation. And then at the very, very end of your Dragon Rage, just like always, you're going to be ending with 2 Essence Bursts if you can, or at least one of them, right? And of course, for your first Living Flame, after you use every single Fire Breath, you want to make sure that you have 2 Essence Burst slots available, right? Just like how whenever you use Shattering Star, you need to make sure you have 1 available so you don't overcap. You don't want to overcap with Leaping Flames, because even in single target, Leaping Flames is going to heal your allies, or maybe it hits like some other mob, right? It can heal yourself if you have damage taken. So long as it's doing any amount of effective healing, it's going to give you back an additional Essence Burst, and that means you get 2 out of it instead of 1. So once again, before the pull, you want to make sure that you have your Ancient Flame right. That is nice and ready. And then in this case, I'm actually going to use the Staff instead of Deep Breath as the opener. But obviously, you know, precasting anything other than Living Flame is going to be ideal here. Okay, so we Staff here, and then we're going to use Dragon Rage into Fire Breath into Shattering Star, right, just like before. But this time after that Shattering Star, we're going to use 2 Disintegrates, and then we're going to use our Eternity Span right here, and we're going to hardcast that Living Flame, and then continue to early chain at tick 3. And I did use a Burnout there because I wanted to get that use out of that Iridescence red that was about to fall. Here I should have used Fire Breath, but I delayed it by 1 global just a little bit. I should have just hesitated there, but it's fine. Gonna be swimming in procs anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And here, obviously, using Shattering Star would have been better, but I was capped on Essence, so I didn't really have that option. So I had to instead go with the Eternity Surge right away, and then wait on the Shattering Star until I was done. And then at the very end there, you saw I probably could have gotten an extension with the Fire Breath. Right, so this is something where if you're doing this rotation, you will sometimes have these close calls where you could have gotten the extension. But remember, you don't have your 4-piece yet. This isn't really that relevant, right? If you do not have the 4-piece bonus from 10.1, this is the rotation you want to be doing unless you are able to consistently get those extensions. And, you know, I'm not able to get those extensions, right? Like, this is something, like, this pull was insane RNG. Like, if you look at the amount of Hoarded Power procs I got on this one, even though I was close to extending, that is an outlier. You're not going to have this sort of RNG every single time. Okay, so here's another example. So yeah, Staff on the pole, and then Dragon Rage into Fire Breath into Shattering Star, you know the deal. Use those 2 Disintegrates. You're early chaining there at tick 3. Use the Eternity Surge, and then we're still just chaining those. Try to get those Living Flame in if you can to try and make use of the Iridescence red buff before it expires, right? Even if you have to cut it close there. Make sure that you're using every spell as it comes up. In terms of Empowers and Shattering Star, right? You want to be clipping with those at tick 3, just like so. And here I'm going to be using that Living Flame, right? Because I want to make sure I get used to that buff. And right here at the very end, I proc the Hoarded Power. So don't even need to go for a second Essence Burst there. Okay, one last example. So this one, I'm going to put it all together, and I'm not going to use the staff. That way you can kind of see what it looks like with the Deep Breath on the opener. Right? Obviously, try to time your Deep Breath so you don't pull early, because if you pull early, you're for sure going to die. Yeah, I usually do that like 1 second here. So yeah, we Deep Breath in, we use our Dragon Rage, Fire Breath, Shattering Star, and I do Hover Weave there, and I use my 2 Disintegrates into my Tip Scales Eternity Surge. We're going to be clipping at 3 ticks as always, using those Disintegrates there, trying to use those Burnout procs, clipping at 3 whenever we can, using those Burnouts, right? And with Lust, obviously, it's very fast-paced, right? A lot more fast-paced than it would be without Lust. We're going to be using Shattering Star right here since it comes up into Eternity Surge. And then we're going to use all of these Disintegrates, and we're so overcapped on Essence, but we still need to get that Living Flame out so we don't waste the Iridescence proc. And as we are wrapping up here, we end with the Essence Burst, and look at that damage, Chef Kiss. So if you're having trouble with this rotation, just remember that all of the things we're talking about in here are completely optional. This is all if you just want a little bit of extra damage. It's all the super min-maxy stuff. If you want more information, you can always go check out my guide on Wowhead, where I write up the changes for all this stuff, and I will keep that up to date. And also, you know, definitely stick around with me because we're going to be watching this whole thing evolve, right? This is just the beginning. I'm sure there's going to be little optimizations here and there for the APL, and it's going to be an evolution. So yeah, speaking of, you know, as my new videos come out, you're probably going to want to see them right away. So now is a great time for you to smash that sub button. If you want to be aware of when all my new videos come out, make sure you also ring that notification bell, right? And if you like this video, if I taught you something, then make sure that you press that like button. Just smash all the buttons, pretty much. And hopefully I see you in the next one.